The massive station hung in space like a silver wheel, slowly turning above the planet Terminus Prime. Inside its walls, beings from 17 different star systems gathered in the Great Chamber. This was the Galactic Council, and today they had called an emergency meeting. Velthar stood at the center of the circular room. His blue skin seemed to glow under the chamber lights as he looked at the faces around him. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few looked almost like walking plants. They were all powerful leaders from across the galaxy, and right now they were all worried. "The quantum computers have finished their analysis," Velthar said. His voice was calm, but his hands shook slightly. "The results are the same as yesterday and the day before that. We have run the simulation 5,000 times." A large alien with red scales leaned forward. This was Kixtal, representative of the Draxian Imperium. His people were warriors who had conquered 12 worlds. "Just tell us, Velthar, what do these machines predict?" Velthar pressed a button. Above them, a hologram appeared showing 2 fleets of spaceships facing each other. One fleet was marked in blue. The other was marked in green. The green fleet was much smaller. "The blue fleet is ours," Velthar explained. 200 warships, the finest vessels in Council space. The green fleet belongs to the humans. 32 ships. Old technology. No special weapons. The hologram began to move. The 2 fleets approached each other. The council members watched carefully. Then suddenly the blue fleet began to break apart. Ships scattered in all directions. Within moments, the blue fleet was retreating. The timer on the hologram showed 7 minutes had passed. "That's impossible," Kixtal said, standing up. "Show me how they win." "What weapon do they use?" "That's the problem," said Norval, the high strategist. She was a thin being with 6 arms and large black eyes. "The computers cannot explain how the humans win. They only know that they do, every single time." A small alien with green skin raised a tentacle. "Perhaps the computers are broken." "We thought the same thing," Norval replied. "We rebuilt the systems 3 times. We used different computers. We checked every line of code. The answer is always the same. If we go to war with humanity, we lose in 7 minutes." The chamber erupted in noise. Everyone started talking at once. Some shouted that it was impossible. Others demanded to see more proof. A few sat quietly, looking scared. Velthar raised his hand for silence. "There is more. The computers show that this war will begin in approximately 3 months. Something will happen that forces both sides into conflict. We have tried to identify what starts the war, but the predictions are unclear. Then we prevent it," said a voice from the back. An alien that looked like a floating jellyfish drifted forward. "We cut all contact with humanity. We close the borders. No trade, no communication, nothing. That might work," Norval said slowly, "but it also might be what causes the war. The humans might see it as an act of hostility." Kixtal slammed his fist on his chair. "This is foolish. I have seen the human ships. They are weak. Their weapons are primitive. They have no shields that can stop our plasma cannons. How can they possibly defeat us?" Velthar looked tired. "That is what we need to understand. The computers are never wrong. For 300 years they have predicted every major conflict in Council space with 98% accuracy. They predicted the Zor Rebellion 6 months before it happened. They warned us about the Kelvin dispute 2 weeks in advance. They have saved millions of lives." "But this makes no sense," Kixtal insisted. "What do we actually know about humans?" Norval pulled up another hologram. This one showed a planet covered in blue oceans and green land. "This is Earth, the human homeworld. They are a young species. They discovered faster than light travel only 80 years ago. Before that, they never left their own solar system." The hologram changed to show cities and vehicles. They have a population of 11 billion on their homeworld, and another 3 billion scattered across their colonies. They are not particularly strong or fast. They have no telepathic abilities. Their technology is average at best. "They sound completely ordinary," someone said. "They are," Norval agreed. "That is what makes this prediction so disturbing. There is nothing in our data that explains how they could defeat us." In a small observation room connected to the Great Chamber, a human sat alone. His name was Taemin, and he was Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. He had been told to wait here while the Council discussed administrative matters. Taemin looked out the window at the stars. He had been on the station for 6 months now, working to build good relationships with the alien species. Everyone had been friendly so far. The council had welcomed humanity with open arms or tentacles or whatever appendages they had. He thought about his wife back on Earth and his 2 children. He had promised them he would only be gone for 1 year. Then he would come home and someone else would take over as ambassador. It was supposed to be an easy assignment. Make friends with aliens, attend boring meetings, smile a lot. Back in the Great Chamber, the arguing continued. I propose we build more warships, Kickstal said. If the humans have some secret weapon, we match it with greater numbers. We build 400 ships, 600 ships, as many as needed. The computers already tested that scenario. Norvell said quietly. We still lose in 7 minutes. In fact, the more ships we send, the faster we lose. That made everyone pause. How is that possible? Someone asked. We don't know, Velthar admitted. But the pattern is clear. Large fleets lose faster than small ones. Powerful weapons make no difference. Superior shields provide no advantage. It's as if the humans have found some way to turn our strengths into weaknesses. An old alien with wrinkled gray skin spoke up. His name was Torvin, and he was the oldest member of the council. In my 300 years of life, I have learned one important lesson. When something seems impossible, we are usually asking the wrong question. What do you mean? Velthar asked. We keep asking how the humans defeat us in battle, Torvin said. Perhaps we should ask why we lose before the battle even begins. The room fell silent as everyone considered this. You think this is psychological? Norvell asked. Some kind of fear or doubt? I think we should study human history more carefully, Torvin replied. They are the only species we have ever met that developed on a single world for their entire history until recently. Every other species in this council spread to multiple worlds before achieving our current level of technology. What makes humans different? Velthar looked thoughtful. That's an interesting question. I will assign researchers to investigate. Do it quickly, Kickstal said. If war is coming in 3 months, we don't have much time. The meeting continued for several more hours, but no solutions were found. Finally, the council members agreed to meet again in 1 week. Until then, they would maintain normal relations with humanity while secretly preparing for a conflict none of them understood. As the chamber emptied, Velthar stood alone, looking at the hologram of Earth. Somewhere down on that blue and green planet, humans lived their lives completely unaware that the most powerful alliance in the galaxy feared them. The door opened, and an aide reminded Velthar that Ambassador Taimin was still waiting in the observation room. Send him home, Velthar said quietly. Tell him the meeting was postponed. As the aide left, Velthar wondered what the human would think if he knew the truth. Would Taimin laugh? Would he be confused? Or would he understand something that the council had missed? The quantum computers hummed in the background, endlessly calculating futures that all ended the same way. Defeat in 7 minutes. The clock was already counting down. 3 weeks had passed since the council's secret meeting, and space along the border had become crowded with warships. Captain Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of his ship, the Indomitable, watching his screens carefully. His vessel was small compared to the alien warships that had appeared in recent days, but it was home. He had commanded this frigate for 5 years, patrolling the space between human colonies and council territory. Captain, 3 more Draxian destroyers just entered the sector, reported his navigator, a young woman named Jisoo. That makes 15 ships in the area. Yunwoo frowned. 15 warships for what the Draxians called a training exercise seemed excessive. These ships were armed and ready for combat. Their weapons were active and their shields were up. Keep our distance, Hyunwoo ordered, but stay close enough to monitor them. If they move toward the mining colony, I want to know immediately. The mining colony on asteroid K447 had 3,000 human workers. They were civilians, families mostly, extracting rare metals that Earth needed for building new ships. The colony had no weapons and no shields. It couldn't defend itself if something went wrong. Hyunwoo had sent 5 formal complaints to the council about the Draxian exercises. Each time he received the same response. The Draxian Imperium is conducting routine military training in neutral space. They have every right to do so under council law. But this wasn't neutral space anymore. Humans had claimed this sector 2 years ago. The council had agreed to the claim. There should be no Draxian warships here. On the council station, Ambassador Taimin was having the same frustrating conversation he'd had every day for a week. With respect, Councillor Velthar, these exercises are becoming dangerous, Taimin said. He stood in Velthar's private office trying to remain calm. Yesterday, a Draxian fighter flew within 5 kilometers of our mining colony. That's a clear violation of the safety protocols. Velthar looked uncomfortable. His blue skin had turned a darker shade, which Taman had learned meant the alien was stressed. I understand your concerns, Ambassador. I have spoken with Representative Kickstall about this matter. And what did he say? He insists his forces are following all proper procedures. Taman felt his patience running thin. Proper procedures don't include aiming weapons at civilian mining operations. The weapons were not aimed, Velthar said quietly. They were simply active. There is a difference. Not to the miners watching those weapons through their windows, Taman replied. Not to the parents trying to explain to their children why alien warships are circling their home. Velthar stood and walked to his window, looking out at the stars. Ambassador Taman, may I speak frankly? Please. There are forces within the Council who believe humanity has expanded too quickly. Some feel you claim too much space, too many resources. The Draxian Imperium is testing boundaries. Testing boundaries? Taman repeated. That's what this is about? Political posturing. Politics always matters in galactic affairs, Velthar said. But I ask that you trust me when I say the Council is working to resolve this situation peacefully. Taman wanted to ask more questions. He wanted to demand real action. But he was a diplomat, and diplomats had to be patient. I will report this to Earth. I hope the Council moves quickly. My government is becoming concerned. After Taman left, Velthar sat down heavily in his chair. The quantum computers had updated their predictions again that morning. War was now 48 hours away. The escalation was happening exactly as predicted, and Velthar felt powerless to stop it. Back in the border sector, things were getting worse. Captain Hyunwoo had just finished his dinner when alarms blared throughout the Indomitable. He ran to the bridge, still fastening his uniform jacket. Report, he shouted. Weapons fire detected, Jisoo said, her voice shaking. One of the Draxian destroyers fired on the cargo transport Lucky Star. Hyunwoo's blood went cold. The Lucky Star was a civilian ship, completely unarmed. It carried supplies between the mining colony and the nearest human station. Get me a status on that transport now. The communications officer, a man named Dong Hyun, worked frantically at his console. Captain, I have the Lucky Star's captain on the line. They're reporting hull damage on their port side. Life support is failing in 2 compartments. Casualties? Dong Hyun listened to his headset and his face went pale. 17 dead, sir. 23 injured. The bridge fell silent. 17 people had just died because a Draxian gunner had made a mistake, or worse, had fired deliberately. Open a channel to the Draxian flagship, Hyunwoo ordered, his voice hard. Now. Moments later, a Draxian officer appeared on the screen. He looked annoyed at being contacted. What do you want, human? You just fired on an unarmed civilian vessel, Hyunwoo said, fighting to keep his voice steady. 17 people are dead. An unfortunate accident, the Draxian replied without emotion. Our targeting systems malfunctioned during the training exercise. An accident? Your ships have been harassing our vessels for 3 weeks. You fire on a civilian transport, kill 17 people and call it an accident? Yes, an accident. We will file the proper incident reports with the Council. Now, if you'll excuse me, we have training to continue. The screen went black. Hyunwoo stood there staring at the empty screen. His hands were shaking with anger. Behind him, his crew waited silently, looking to him for guidance. Get me Earth Command, Hyunwoo finally said. This needs to go all the way to the top. Within 6 hours, the news had spread across all of human space. 17 civilians killed by Draxian weapons. Images of the damaged Lucky Star appeared on every screen. People saw the holes torn in the ship's hull, saw the frozen bodies floating in space, saw the faces of the dead in memorial broadcasts. Humanity demanded action. On Earth, at the Naval Command Headquarters, Admiral Jiwoo received her orders from the President herself. The Admiral was a career officer who had spent 40 years in the fleet. She was calm, professional, and known for making good decisions under pressure. Now she sat in her office looking at the deployment orders on her desk. The President wanted a show of force. The Fourth Fleet would move to the border sector with enough ships to make the Draxians think twice about more accidents. Assemble 32 vessels, the orders read. Defensive posture only. Protect human assets and civilians. Do not engage unless fired upon. Jiwoo called in her staff and began making plans. Within 12 hours, 32 human warships would be heading to the border. It would be the largest military deployment in human history since the colony wars 50 years ago. At the same time, on the council station, the emergency session was reconvening. "This changes everything," Chixtal said. And for the first time he looked worried. "The humans are mobilizing their fleet." "Because you killed their people," Velthar said angrily. "What did you expect them to do? Send flowers? It was an accident." "Was it?" Velthar demanded. "Or were your forces testing to see how humans would respond to casualties?" Chixtal didn't answer. Norvel stood up, her 6 arms spread wide. "The quantum computers have updated their timeline. War begins in 48 hours. Everything is happening exactly as predicted." "Then we stop it," said Torvin, the old council member. "We order the Draxian fleet to withdraw immediately. We offer compensation to the human families. We apologize." "The Draxian Imperium does not apologize," Chixtal said stiffly. "Then the Draxian Imperium will lose this war," Torvin replied calmly. "The computers have shown us the future. Pride will not change it." "I don't believe these predictions," Chixtal said, but his voice lacked confidence now. "Human ships are inferior. Their weapons are weaker. Their shields are outdated. We have every advantage. Except one," Velthar said quietly. "We don't know what we're missing. That's the advantage that defeats us every time." In his quarters, Ambassador Tae Min was packing his belongings. Earth had recalled him for urgent consultations. He would be leaving the station in the morning. As he folded his clothes, he thought about the past 6 months. The friendly meetings, the cultural exchanges, the optimism about humanity's place in galactic society. Now 17 people were dead, and warships were gathering for a conflict nobody wanted but nobody seemed able to prevent. There was a knock at his door. When Tae Min opened it, he found Velthar standing there. "May I come in?" the council leader asked. "Of course." Velthar entered and stood awkwardly in the small room. "I wanted to apologize, Ambassador, for the deaths of your people, for the failure of the council to prevent this situation, for everything." "Thank you," Tae Min said, "but apologies don't bring back the dead." "No, they don't." Velthar hesitated, then said, "May I ask you a question?" "About humans?" "Yes." "Your people have been to space for less than a century. You have only a few dozen worlds. You are surrounded by species far older and more powerful than you, yet you don't seem afraid. Why is that?" Tae Min thought about the question carefully before answering. "Because we've faced worse than aliens with warships. We've faced ourselves." Velthar looked confused. "I don't understand." "You will," Tae Min said quietly. "I hope you will." The next morning, as Tae Min's shuttle departed the station, Admiral Jiwoo's fleet was already halfway to the border sector. Captain Hyunwoo stood on his bridge, watching the scanners as more and more human ships arrived in the area. The Draxian fleet hadn't moved. Admiral Jiwoo's fleet arrived in the border sector 12 hours before the predicted start of the war. Her flagship, the Eternal Dawn, was the largest vessel in human space. It carried 2,000 crew members and enough weapons to destroy a small moon. But as Jiwoo looked at her tactical displays, she knew her 32 ships were badly outnumbered. The Draxian fleet had grown to 200 warships. They formed a massive wall of steel and energy weapons between the human fleet and the mining colony. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Draxian flagship," reported her communications officer. "Put it on screen." A large Draxian commander appeared, his red scales gleaming under harsh lights. "I am Fleet Commander Zarn. You have entered Draxian-controlled space. You will withdraw immediately or be destroyed. This is Admiral Jiwoo of the Earth Fourth Fleet. This sector belongs to humanity under Council agreement. You are the ones who need to withdraw." "The Council agreement is under review," Zarn replied. "Until the matter is settled, this space is contested. We have superior numbers and superior firepower. You cannot win." Jiwoo kept her face calm. "Commander Zarn, we don't want war, but we will defend our people and our territory. I'm asking you one last time to withdraw peacefully." "The Draxian Imperium does not retreat," Zarn said. "You have 1 hour to leave. After that, we will consider your presence an act of war." The screen went dark. On the council station, Velthar watched the same exchange on his monitors. Around him, the other council members sat in silence. The quantum computer showed 58 minutes until war began. "We should intervene," Torvin said. "Send council peacekeeping forces to separate them." "There isn't time," Norvel replied. Our nearest peacekeeping fleet is 6 hours away. The war will be over before they arrive. Over in 7 minutes, according to the predictions, Kixtal said bitterly. Though I still don't believe it. You'll believe it soon enough, Velthar said quietly. Captain Hyunwoo sat on the bridge of the Indomitable, which was part of Admiral Jiwoo's fleet. He had been in the military for 15 years, but he had never been in a real battle. No human in his generation had. The last war humanity fought was 50 years ago, before he was born. He looked at his crew. Jisoo at navigation looked scared. Donghyun at communications was sweating despite the cool air. His weapons officer, a woman named Young Hee, kept checking and rechecking her systems nervously. All crew, this is the captain, Hyunwoo said over the ship-wide intercom. I won't lie to you. The odds don't look good. The enemy has us outnumbered 6-1. They have bigger ships and heavier weapons. By all logic, we shouldn't be able to win this fight. He paused, letting that sink in. But I want you to remember something. Humanity didn't survive 10,000 years by following logic. We survived by adapting, by thinking differently, by finding ways to win when winning seemed impossible. Today we're going to show the galaxy what that means. Captain, incoming message from Admiral Jiwoo, Donghyun reported. She's sending new orders to all ships. Protocol Sigma-7. Hyunwoo felt his heart beat faster. He had trained for Protocol Sigma-7 in the academy, but he never thought he would actually use it. It was considered an experimental tactic, something that worked in simulations but had never been tested in real combat. Acknowledge the orders, Hyunwoo said. All stations prepare to execute Protocol Sigma-7 on my mark. The hour passed quickly. Then Fleet Commander Zarn sent one final message. Your time is up. This is your last chance to retreat. We're not going anywhere, Admiral Jiwoo replied. Then you will die, Zarn said, and cut the transmission. The Draxian fleet began to move forward in perfect formation. 200 ships advancing like a wall of metal and fire. Their plasma cannons charged, their missile tubes loaded, their shields at maximum power. On the council station, Velthar watched the timer count down. 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. It's starting, Norvell whispered. Admiral Jiwoo gave the order. All ships execute Protocol Sigma-7. Now, the human fleet suddenly broke apart. Ships scattered in what looked like random directions, each vessel moving on a different course with no apparent pattern or coordination. To the Draxians, it looked like panic, like the human fleet was falling apart before the battle even began. They're running, one of the Draxian officers shouted with glee. No, Commander Zarn said slowly, watching his tactical display. This is something else. Maintain formation and prepare to fire on any targets that come into range. But finding targets became impossible. The human ships were moving too erratically, changing course every few seconds, accelerating and decelerating in unpredictable patterns. Draxian targeting computers struggled to get a lock. Gunners found their crosshairs constantly sliding away from their targets. This is strange, Zarn muttered. What are they doing? Then the broadcasts began. Lieutenant Minji sat at her station aboard the Indomitable, her hands flying across her keyboard. She was the communications officer, and right now she had the most important job in the fleet. Beginning broadcast now, she said calmly. Every communication channel in the area suddenly flooded with transmissions. But these weren't military orders or tactical data. They were personnel files. On every Draxian ship, on every screen and display, information began appearing. Names, ages, home planets, family details, medical histories. The complete personnel files of every single Draxian crew member in the battle space. What is this? A Draxian gunner asked, staring at his screen. This is my information. How did they get this? Then the projections started appearing. Commander Bora stood on the bridge of the human destroyer Relentless, watching her own displays with a cold expression. Her job was to run the probability algorithms, and she was very good at her job. Target the Draxian battleship Rising Storm, Bora ordered. Show me casualty projections for a direct plasma hit to their port side. Her computer calculated instantly. The results appeared on her screen, and she broadcast them directly to the Rising Storm itself. On the Rising Storm, every crew member suddenly saw a list appear. It showed names, 23 names of crew members who worked in the port side sections. Next to each name was detailed medical information, showing exactly how they would die if a plasma bolt hit that location. Burns, explosive decompression, radiation poisoning, every horrible detail, but the humans hadn't fired. This was just a projection, a possibility, a future that hadn't happened yet but could happen at any moment. This is psychological warfare, Commander Zarn realized. They're trying to frighten us. It's working, one of his officers admitted quietly. More projections appeared. The Draxian cruiser Iron Fist received a detailed analysis of what would happen if their engine core was hit. 67 crew members dead, the ship crippled and drifting. The destroyer Warhammer saw projections showing how many escape pods would make it to safety if the ship exploded, and how many wouldn't. Every ship, every crew member, every possible death was broadcast in cold, clinical detail. Fire on them, Zarn ordered. All ships open fire. Plasma bolts and missiles filled the space, but the human ships were never where the Draxians expected them to be. The erratic movement patterns meant most shots missed completely. The few that hit found shields and armor designed to absorb exactly those types of weapons. And every time the Draxians fired, new projections appeared. A Draxian gunner aimed at the human frigate Steadfast. Before he could fire, a message appeared on his screen showing that the return fire would kill 6 people on his deck, including his best friend Kral. It showed Kral's picture, his children's names, his wife's name. The gunner hesitated. His finger froze on the trigger. Across the Draxian fleet, the same thing was happening. Gunners saw the faces of their friends who would die. Captains saw projections of their ships being destroyed. Crew members watched detailed animations of their own deaths. The humans still hadn't fired a single weapon. They didn't need to. They're breaking formation, Norvell said on the council station. Look at the Draxian fleet. Ships are drifting out of position. It was true. The perfect Draxian formation was falling apart. Some ships were slowing down. Others were moving away from the human vessels. A few had stopped advancing entirely. 4 minutes had passed. Admiral Jiwoo watched her tactical display and saw exactly what she had hoped to see. The enemy wasn't fighting anymore. They were thinking, doubting, hesitating. Every Draxian crew member was looking at their own mortality broadcast in front of them. All ships intensify broadcasts, she ordered. I want every Draxian in this sector to know exactly what war costs. More data flooded the channels. Not just casualty projections now, but historical data. Images from old Draxian wars showing destroyed ships and dead warriors. Medical records of burn victims and radiation survivors. Statistics about how many soldiers never recovered from their injuries. How many families lost their primary providers. How many children grew up without parents. This was information the Draxian military usually kept classified. But human intelligence had been very thorough in their research. Stop this, one of the Draxian captains broadcast. This is not honorable combat. Honor doesn't bring back the dead, Admiral Jiwoo replied coldly. We know exactly how many people will die if this battle continues. Do you want to be responsible for all those deaths? The great chamber of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. For 3 days after the 7-minute war, nobody had known what to say. Now finally they were ready to talk about what had happened. Felthar stood at the center of the room looking tired. He hadn't slept much since watching the battle. We have received complete reports from the Draxian fleet. High Strategist Norvell will present the analysis. Norvell moved to the display area, her 6 arms organizing different screens and data projections. What we witnessed was not a military victory in the traditional sense. The humans won without firing weapons, without destroying ships, without killing anyone. Then how did they win? Asked a council member from the back. They won by making the Draxians understand the cost of war before paying it, Norvell explained. She pulled up footage from the battle. Watch carefully. The human ships scattered in random patterns, making targeting difficult. But this was not their primary tactic. It was merely a distraction. The footage showed the streams of data flooding Draxian communication channels. Names, faces, medical projections, casualty estimates. The real weapon was information, Norvell continued. The humans bombarded the Draxian fleet with detailed predictions of who would die, how they would die, and what their deaths would mean. Every gunner saw their friends' names. Every captain saw their crew's fate. Every warrior was forced to think about the reality of war instead of the glory of it. Kickstall sat quietly in his seat. The proud Draxian representative looked smaller somehow. My people have been warriors for 1,000 years. We have conquered 12 worlds. We have won countless battles. But you never fought anyone who made you understand what you were doing, Torvin said gently. You never faced an enemy who showed you the price before demanding payment? Commander Zarn has been removed from his position, Kixtal said quietly. The Imperium High Command considers his retreat to be cowardice. It wasn't cowardice, Velthar said firmly. It was wisdom. He chose to save 4,000 lives rather than spend them for pride. That is not how the Imperium sees it. Then perhaps the Imperium needs to change how it sees things, Velthar replied. Ambassador Taemin had been summoned back to the council station immediately after the battle. Now he sat in the observation room where he had waited so many times before, but this time he had been invited into the great chamber itself. When he entered, every being in the room turned to look at him. Some looked curious, others looked afraid. A few looked angry. Ambassador Taemin, Velthar said formally, the council has asked you here to answer questions about human military tactics. We need to understand what happened. Taemin walked to the center of the chamber. He felt small surrounded by so many alien species, but he kept his voice steady. What would you like to know? How did your military know that psychological warfare would work against the Draxians? Norvel asked. You had limited contact with them before the battle. How did you predict their response? We didn't predict their specific response, Taemin explained. We predicted that they were living beings who didn't want to die, and who didn't want their friends to die. That's not specific to Draxians. That's universal. But how did you develop such tactics? Velthar asked. Your species is young. You have limited combat experience compared to most council members. Taemin almost laughed but stopped himself. Limited experience? Humanity has been at war for our entire recorded history. We have fought tens of thousands of wars. We have developed hundreds of different ways to kill each other, and just as many ways to avoid killing each other. The chamber fell silent. You don't understand, Taemin continued. For thousands of years we only had one planet. When we fought wars, we couldn't retreat to another star system. We couldn't abandon a world and start over somewhere else. Every war was fought on the same ground where our families lived. Every battlefield was someone's home. Every victory meant walking through the ruins of cities we had destroyed. He paused, looking around the room. We learned things that you never had to learn. We learned that winning a war isn't the same as winning peace. We learned that killing your enemy doesn't solve the problems that started the fight. We learned that the real skill isn't knowing how to win battles, it's knowing how to avoid fighting them in the first place. But you have such limited resources compared to the Council, someone said. How could you gather all that intelligence data on the Draxian fleet? We've had diplomats and observers in Council space for 6 months, Taemin replied. We didn't gather military secrets. We gathered public information. Personnel rosters are filed with the Council for safety regulations. Medical standards are published for emergency response. Ship designs are registered for docking compatibility. Everything we needed was available to anyone who bothered to look. Then why didn't we see this coming? Kixtal demanded. Because you've been at peace for 300 years, Taemin said simply. You forgot how to think like soldiers. You forgot that information is as powerful as weapons. You forgot that fear of death is stronger than loyalty to an empire. Velthar leaned forward. Ambassador, I must ask you something directly. Is humanity dangerous to the Council? Taemin considered the question carefully. That depends on what you mean by dangerous. Will we conquer you? No, we don't want your worlds or your resources. Will we destroy you? No. We came to space looking for friends, not enemies. Then what do you want? Velthar asked. We want what any species wants. Safety for our people. Room to grow. A chance to build a future. Taemin looked directly at the Council leader. But we will not be victims. We will not allow ourselves to be pushed around or threatened. If someone attacks us, we will defend ourselves. What you saw in the 7-minute war is what defense looks like when it's done by people who understand war too well. A new voice spoke up. It was Senior Analyst Daun, a human civilian who had been brought to the station to help explain human military history to the Council. She was a professor at Earth's main war college. If I may add something, Daun said, standing. The Council has made a critical mistake in how you view humanity. You looked at our technology and our weapons and decided we were not a threat. But technology is the least important part of warfare. She pulled up a holographic display showing human history. Humanity has produced 412 distinct military doctrines throughout our history. The Council has produced 12 in 3 centuries. We have fought wars in every possible environment: land, sea, air, space, underground, underwater. We have fought wars with millions of soldiers and wars with small teams. We have fought wars that lasted decades and wars that were over in hours. The displays changed, showing different battles and conflicts from Earth's history. We have learned every lesson that war can teach. We know that battles are won in the minds of soldiers before they're won on the battlefield. We know that morale matters more than weapons. We know that understanding your enemy is more important than having superior firepower. This is frightening, someone whispered. It should be, Da'un said bluntly. But understand this. All of that experience, all of those lessons taught us one final thing. War is failure. When we go to war, it means we failed to solve our problems peacefully. The goal isn't to be good at war. The goal is to be so good at understanding conflict that war becomes unnecessary. Velthar looked thoughtful. That is why you didn't fire your weapons. You were demonstrating that you could win without violence. Exactly, Dayun confirmed. Admiral Jiwu had the firepower to destroy the Draxian fleet, but destroying them wouldn't have solved anything. It would have just started a larger war. So instead, she made them understand what they were about to lose. She gave them a reason to choose peace. And if they had not chosen peace? Kixtel asked. If we had continued attacking despite the broadcasts, then we would have defended ourselves, Timon said. Make no mistake, we were prepared to fight. But fighting was the last option, not the first. The council meeting continued for hours. Council members asked hundreds of questions about human history, human tactics, human thinking. Dayun answered patiently, explaining concepts that seemed obvious to humans but revolutionary to species who had known mostly peace. Finally, as the meeting was ending, Torvin spoke up. I have lived for 300 years. I have seen the rise and fall of empires, the birth and death of civilizations. In all that time, I have never met a species like humanity. Is that good or bad? Taman asked. Both, Torvin replied honestly. You are dangerous because you understand danger so well. You are peaceful because you understand the cost of war. You are strong because you survived being your own worst enemy. He paused, then continued. The council has made a decision while you were speaking. We would like to offer humanity a permanent seat on the council with full voting rights. You would be equal partners in all galactic affairs. Taman felt his heart race. This was far more than he had expected. I will need to consult with my government, of course. But I hope they will accept. Velthar stood and approached Timon. The quantum computers predicted our defeat, but they didn't predict what would come after. Perhaps that's the real lesson here. The future is not fixed. We can choose peace even when war seems inevitable. We can, Timon agreed, if we're willing to work. 6 months after the 7-minute war, the council station looked different. A new wing had been added to accommodate the human delegation, and the flags of Earth now hung alongside the banners of 17 other civilizations in the Great Chamber. Admiral Jiwu walked through the corridors of the station, still adjusting to her new role. She had traded her military uniform for diplomatic clothing, though she kept her admiral's rank. The council had asked her specifically to lead the human delegation, believing that the person who won the war should help maintain the peace. Admiral, you have a meeting with the Strategic Planning Committee in 10 minutes, her assistant reminded her. Jiwu nodded. The Strategic Planning Committee was responsible for preventing conflicts before they started. It was important work, and now humans had a voice in those decisions. She entered the meeting room where 5 council members waited. Velthar was there, along with Norvel, Torvin, and 2 others she had come to know well over the past months. Thank you for coming, Admiral, Velthar said. We have a situation developing in the outer sectors. 2 species are arguing over mining rights to an asteroid field. Both sides are mobilizing ships. How long until shooting starts? Jiwu asked. The quantum computers predict 3 to 5 days, Norvel replied. What are the species? The Kelvin Consortium and the Vex Republic. Both are minor powers with limited military capability. Jiwu thought for a moment. Send Lieutenant Minji. She's good at communication and understanding different perspectives. Have her talk to both sides separately, then bring them together. You don't want to threaten them? One of the other council members asked, surprised. No. They're not fighting because they want war. They're fighting because they both need those resources and don't see another solution. Minji can help them find one. Velthar nodded approvingly. I agree with this approach. Make it so. The meeting continued, discussing various other issues across council space. Ji-woo found that many problems could be solved simply by talking to people, understanding their needs, and finding compromises. It was different from military command, but in some ways more satisfying. Lieutenant Min-ji had indeed been transferred to the Council's Strategic Communications Division. She sat in her new office reviewing files on the Kelvin Consortium and the Vex Republic. Both species were herbivores who valued family and community. Both had growing populations that needed resources. This should be straightforward, Min-ji said to herself. She scheduled meetings with representatives from both species. The Kelvin representative arrived first. He was a small being with green fur and large eyes. "We found that asteroid field first," he insisted. "It belongs to us by right of discovery." "And how much of the resources in that field do you actually need?" Min-ji asked gently. "Well, we could use—" The representative paused. "We need enough to support our colonies for the next 10 years. "How much is that exactly?" "About 30% of the field's estimated resources." "I see. Thank you for being honest with me." The Vex representative came next. She was a tall being with blue scales and a calm demeanor. She told Min-ji almost exactly the same story, except from her species' perspective. "And how much do you need?" Min-ji asked. "About 40% of the field's resources for the next 10 years. Min-ji smiled. "So together you need 70%. That means 30% will go unused. Instead of fighting over who gets everything, why not divide the field proportionally? You each get what you need, and the extra can be held in reserve or shared." Both representatives looked surprised when she brought them together and proposed this solution. "It's that simple?" the Kelvin representative asked. "It's that simple," Min-ji confirmed. "The problem wasn't the asteroid field. The problem was that neither of you talked to each other about what you actually needed. Within 2 days, the crisis was resolved. The Kelvin Consortium and Vex Republic signed a resource-sharing agreement. The quantum computers updated their predictions. War averted. Back on Earth, Professor Daun continued her work at the War College, but now she also taught classes on the Council Station via holographic link. Her students included military officers from a dozen different species, all eager to learn about human military history. "Today we're discussing the concept of proportional response," Daun said to her class. "This is a human military doctrine that states you should match your response to the level of threat you face." A Draxian officer raised his hand. "Why not always use maximum force? Wouldn't that end conflicts faster?" "Sometimes," Dayan acknowledged. "But maximum force also creates maximum resentment. If someone accidentally bumps into you and you punch them in the face, you've created an enemy. If someone bumps into you and you say, 'Excuse me,' you've avoided conflict. But in war," the Draxian began. "In war, you need to think about what comes after," Daun interrupted. "You might win the battle with maximum force, but what happens next? Do you occupy the territory? Do you make peace with survivors who hate you? Do you spend decades fighting insurgencies? Maximum force often creates more problems than it solves." She pulled up examples from human history, showing conflicts that were won militarily but lost politically, and conflicts that were resolved through careful application of limited force. The students listened carefully. Many of them had never thought about war this way. In their cultures, war was glorious or necessary or sometimes just how things were done. The idea that war had long-term consequences beyond immediate victory or defeat was new. Captain Hyun-woo, now promoted to commander, worked with a joint council human task force on patrol duties. His crew was mixed now, with humans and aliens working together. It was strange at first, but everyone adjusted. "Commander, we're detecting a distress signal," reported Jisoo, who was still his navigator. "What's the situation?" "A civilian transport is under attack by pirates. 3 small ships, primitive weapons. Set course to intercept. Charge weapons but do not fire unless absolutely necessary." When they arrived, the pirates saw a council warship and immediately tried to flee. Hyunwoo opened a channel. "This is Commander Hyunwoo of the council patrol ship Indomitable. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded or we will disable your ships." The pirates didn't respond, continuing their attempt to escape. Hyunwoo ordered precise shots that disabled their engines without causing casualties. Within minutes, all 3 pirate ships were drifting in space, unable to move but intact. "This is how it's done," Hyunwoo explained to his alien crew members. "We stop the threat without killing anyone if possible. Every life has value, even pirates. They'll be arrested, tried, and given a chance to reform. In the Draxian Imperium, pirates are executed immediately, one of his Draxian crew members said. And does that stop piracy? Hyunwoo asked. The Draxian thought about it. No, there are always more pirates. Exactly. Killing them doesn't solve the root problem. We need to understand why people become pirates and address those causes. The Draxian looked thoughtful. Many things humans said made sense when you really considered them. Back on the council station, Ambassador Taemin prepared for the quarterly council meeting. His wife and children had joined him now, living in the human residential section of the station. His daughter, who was 7 years old, had made friends with alien children from 3 different species. She didn't see them as aliens anymore. They were just her friends. The meeting began with standard business, trade agreements, exploration rights, cultural exchange programs. Then Velthar brought up a new topic. The council has received a request from the Draxian Imperium. They want to establish a joint military training program with human forces. Kixtal stood. Over the past months, he had changed. He no longer spoke with the same arrogance. My people have realized that we need to learn from humanity. We have been warriors for 1,000 years, but we never truly understood what it meant to be soldiers. We request permission to send officers to study at Earth's military academies. Taemin glanced at Admiral Jiwoo, who nodded. Earth would be honored to host Draxian officers. We believe that understanding between our militaries will help prevent future conflicts. There is one condition, Jiwoo added. Our curriculum includes extensive study of war's consequences, not just tactics and strategy. Your officers will visit historical battlefields, meet with survivors of wars, and learn about the psychological cost of combat. If they're not willing to learn those lessons, they shouldn't come. We accept, Kixtal said. It is exactly those lessons that we need to learn. In the outer sectors, diplomat Subin worked on a territorial dispute between 2 minor species. She sat in a small room with representatives from both sides. Listening to their complaints, they crossed our border 14 times last year, one representative said. Only because they blocked our traditional trade route, the other responded. Subin let them argue for a while, taking notes. Then she held up her hand. I've listened to both of you. Here's what I hear. You're both scared. You're scared that if you give an inch, the other side will take a mile. You're scared that compromise means weakness. Am I right? Both representatives looked uncomfortable but nodded. That fear is normal, Subin said. But fear makes bad decisions. Let me tell you about Earth's history. We had hundreds of borders between different nations.